Hi everyone, welcome to this IG Live. I'm going to invite Tulsi to join us today. We're going to talk about all things Jupiter in Pisces and how to make the most of this transit. So as soon as she shows up, I'll invite her in and we'll begin. We had a powerful discussion about a month ago, all things sidereal transit, talking about Jyotish, and it was a wonderful conversation. So we decided to go ahead and dive in again and discuss more in depth about Jupiter and this powerful transit of Jupiter that's happening right now. And I want to help you make the most out of this 1 year transit. We don't get this kind of support very often, every 12 years. Jupiter goes into Pisces. So this is a very important year for you to really get the benefits of Jupiter and to get the support for your Tulsi. And so glad to have you here today, Tulsi, to talk all about Jupiter and this powerful transit of Jupiter in Pisces. And welcome. Glad to have you here. Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
Is Mercury going to be kind to us today? I'm already having a few things. I'm hoping my phone battery will work and we can move forward here. Good to see you today, Tulsi. How are
Oh,
you?
sister, it's so good to be here. I'm well, and also praying to Bud for his grace.
Yeah, I'm working with a few little challenges right now, but we're going to go ahead and move forward. I was just giving you an introduction. Do you want to share anything about you, your work, and what's inspiring you right now?
Hmm. Well, let's see. I'll open with just a short little mantra to kind of seal
Wonderful.
this Jyoti light container together. Om Gam Ganapati Namaha. Om Aim Saraswati Namaha.
It's a good way to
So,
start. Thank
yes, thank you for having me. So yeah, right now I'm feeling so inspired to be dropping in with one-on-one clients who are just really thirsty and available and genuine, and feels so good just to lock into that space. So I'm available for one-on-one consultations to kind of shine light on an individual's journey and karmas, and as well as this weekend, this Memorial Day weekend, I'm giving a Vedic astrology workshop at this beautiful Soul Sovereign gathering in at Cielos in Cuyama Valley, just north of Ojai in Southern California. And the gathering is called Music and Sky, and I'll also be
you.
giving readings. So it's such a delight to have that recognition of this ancient science and that invitation to really be in community. So
Mm.
I'm really, really grateful for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I imagine in your sessions, you've been talking a lot about Jupiter and the influence of Jupiter right now on individuals as well as their dharmic path and
Mm.
their sense of purpose or soul purpose. So, what are you noticing with this Jupiter transit so far? I want to help people make the most out of this year.
Mm.
I've started talking about this for many, many months. I know you have as well. We touched on it in our last IG live when we went into the transits. So, what are your recommendations, or what are you noticing so far?
Mm. And I wish I could isolate just our awareness on our Jupiter and Pisces, because that would be feel like a blessing in this moment,
Mm,
and to kind of find that eye of the storm in a sense. I think what I've been noticing a lot is that post eclipse, almost
Mm,
reaching for that inspiration and hope of that Jupiter wisdom and light. And so I think most people I connect with, including myself, there's an element of, okay, things are still feeling like they're becoming slightly unglued. A lot
mm,
has been revealed through this eclipse portal, for lack of a
mm,
better word. And since Mercury retrograde, as we touched on, is still making his dance in Taurus, I think so many people I've been talking to are feeling ready. They're feeling ready to move forward and step into that Jupiter and Pisces energy. And I think it's beautiful to have that focus there, to have the energy there, and yet the presence still of, okay, it's we've been inward, we've been reflecting, we've been grounding. And so I think just kind of sitting and watching still, just like that last week of, okay, wow, what are my hopes and dreams? Where
mm,
is my place in community? How am I aligning with my Dharma? Right? That
mm,
Jupiter and Pisces is almost a blessing for those who are receiving the wisdom as much as giving the wisdom, because that Jupiter and Pisces says now we can get the teachings, we can get the guidance that's really locking in and aligning with that higher level of Dharma, that
mm,
Dharma that is very personal as well as more global, right? That's more in line with that higher vision, right? That imagination, that which is beyond all of this, yet which is very much connected to the here and now and the material of it all.
mm.
And so, we have that waning moon right now, going into the weekend, right?
Mm.
This weekend so interesting with the new moon, and then, or excuse me, I shouldn't say this weekend. It's really the next couple weeks. We have the relief of Jupiter, or excuse me,
Mm.
Mercury retrograde, moving direct in Taurus, and then the next day Saturn, making
Mm.
its retrograde motion. So forgive me for dancing around the Jupiter question. I,
That
you
is,
know, I,
it's hard to even be here right now.
I'm right.
Uh, I'm noticing, and I've talked to quite a few people, including clients, neighbors, friends, partner, and a similar experience of a shift in the perception and the experience of time. And so I'm noticing personally, just even staying grounded in the body is really important right now. And I would say it's not been easy over the last week or so. So that's something I'm really tending to is more earth energy, more grounding, movement of the body, breath to remember, be in this body, stay here, focused, present, connected. So that's a struggle that I'm noticing personally. And this shift with time. And so maybe you've noticed this too. I don't know, maybe you're talking to others. It's a phenomenon that I'm curious about right now because I thought it was just me. And sometimes things are just me, but as I have conversations with people, I'm realizing it's not just me, which actually um, is even more interesting and inspiring. I'm not sure if it is what we just went through with the eclipse cycle, which was an eclipse cycle on a different level than I have even remembered. I think most of us are still digesting and integrating whatever that was. But in the aftermath of that, and maybe Saturn is involved because Saturn rules time and nature's structure. But my sense is that many of us are having a shift with our maybe you could even call it an upgrade with our ability to um, align with nature and natural time. And I find that there is more easefulness, more surrender, more acceptance. I think those are qualities of Jupiter in Pisces that may be occurring as well simultaneously. What are you noticing, Tulsi? Is this something that you're talking to your clients about as well? Are you noticing a shift
Mm,
perception of time and space?
mm. I love that story you just painted. And I think every single person I've gone deep with
Mhm.
recently, which would really be my clients and the far and few between, who were popping our head up and saying, it's not even like what day it is. It's almost like what dimension are we in? Because yes, that relationship with time has such an alteration, and it seems like I love that word, that the up leveling, the upgrade. It's as if the story is in the midst of being rewritten. I don't know if
Mm,
you ever saw that movie Dark City in the 90s, which is very similar to the Matrix. And every
mm,
night this city would move and exchange and tell stories, and while everyone slept, and they'd wake up
mm,
to a new reality without memory of that previous story. Yet the ones who were awake were witness to that shift. So it
mm,
almost seems as if a metaphor where it's we're all surfing together, and you can be in the wave and getting tumbled and kind of writing that story, or noticing how the architecture is taking a shift. And so we can look at architecture as Libra, right? We know that the eclipse took place in the first degrees of Scorpio, yet K2, or that south node being in Libra, was a significator of an eclipse, since it's within that. I believe it's an 18-degree, you know, arc away
mm,
from the node. And so what's Libra? Partially that architecture, right? Our relationship with the other, with the material, with the contracts, to what we're shaking our hands on, what we're agreeing upon, what we're committing to, as well as shunning, right? The timekeeper.
mm.
So when you were kind of saying these questions, I'm saying all of it, right? Both of them, that
Yeah.
coming out of this eclipse time, which that lunar eclipse cycle last year, the lunar eclipse was coming first. This first eclipse season and the access of Libra and Aries, self and other, had that lunar eclipse happening second. And
Mm,
that lunar eclipse is the one, right? That has that instant reveal, that instant shakeup.
mm.
And so, absolutely, we're still digesting that. When you said it's kind of hard to be here, it's like it's almost as if here is hard to even locate. Right? It's
Yeah.
pulling in all,
Yeah.
and talk about the practice of grounding.
Yeah.
And so Saturn is about to go retrograde. So since it moves so slowly, anyways, I think we're feeling that stillness.
Mhm.
And where is Shani retrograding but none other than Dhanisha star in
Mm,
Aquarius, which is another bit of a timekeeper, right? The rhythm, the drum, the flute,
mm.
the hollowness, which contains life force energy flowing
True.
through it. So
Mm.
I think there's many aspects of this architecture of the timekeeping that says things need to change.
Yeah.
And it might just be me, so I'm curious about you. I feel the confrontation of what I'm putting my attention on, and the boundaries of this is not for me, this is no longer working, and navigating with ease and grace that kindness of how can I show up, where can I show up, and to
Mm,
what capacity. And a lot
mm.
of it's saying, actually, this this is going to shift a little bit. There's a lot of learning going on with agreement. I'm going to commit to this, and oh, actually, can we make it look a little bit more like this, or let me get back to you so I can actually find out where my physical body is in space and time and what that may or may not look like tomorrow. So I think there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, there is a lot of question. There's a lot of unknown. And as a Scorpio ascendant, that's something I'm more comfortable with is
Mm.
I know. And that's actually been a phrase I've used this entire
Mm.
last year. Now I chuckle with friends about it, but that's my response to almost everything these days is I just don't know. And I'm finding comfort in that. I think the boundary work you mentioned is really important. That's maybe part of what's changing is that proprioception of where am I in this body in relation to time and space? And the body is the boundary, but that seems to be shifting as well. And so boundaries are shifting, where am I in relation to this other? That would make sense with K2 and Libra as well. The shifting dynamics of relationship to self and other. We talked about that in our last IG Live, but this is a very different feeling. I think we were talking more on a cerebral level in our last session, and what I'm noticing now is it's really dropping into a deeper feeling level now
Beautiful.
that these shifts have taken place. April was 9 planets shifting back to back, including 4 major transits. And so what I've been reminding myself and my clients is it takes time to integrate these big shifts. May has been, in many ways, an integration month, a landing. Where am I now?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel like I've totally arrived at any conclusion at this point, but the changes feel palpable. Something is really
Mm.
shifting and moving in it's a very ethereal kind of liminal reality
Mm.
that is moving. And I agree. I think structure changing is a non-negotiable. That is really what is happening now. I'm not sure if it's everybody who's noticing this. Those that I am also diving deep with or touching in with, we are having this experience. Is it the whole of the planet? I don't know. But there's enough of us who are having this experience of shifting structures, shifting time and space, this upgrade of awareness and relationship to self and other, and I would include nature in that shift. There seems to be enough of us having this experience that it gives me a lot of hope. And I actually, since we grew up in the same background, it's something I've been contemplating because we grew up with this terminology and this
Mm.
um, references to bringing Sat Yug into this time of Kali Yug. And in many ways, and I don't know if you feel this way or not, I have felt like I've had a foot in 2 worlds where I would leave the spiritual community and come out into this pretty harsh reality and really have to integrate like what's real, like what is real really. And it's been many, many years of really creating what is real for me
Mm.
and what I know to be um, meaningful and nourishing and supportive. But it's almost as though what we grew up hearing is actually happening, and it's kind of a mind fuck because wait a second, this is really happening, and it's not just me. It's those around me as well. So I am finding this to be fascinating. I'm kind of just in awe right now.
Mm.
I know we're here to talk about Jupiter, but I'm imagining this is all part of these transits that we're working with right now, and just sort of the splendor of this shift that we're going through as a planet right now. And I am truly inspired and hopeful. And I
Mm.
know we talked about that last time, but it seems to be as though it's actually happening now. We're not just talking about it. There's
Mm.
that experiential feeling level that is really taking place. So I'm very hopeful. That's I'm going to stay in that lane.
Mm. I love the word you used. One of them, civic ethereal, because in our last drop in, we, like you said, it was very cerebral, very, we're seeing this coming. And
Yes.
now it's as if it hasn't become yet.
Hmm.
All those pieces are, it's almost like that veil has become really thin and we can witness. And there's that texture of, oh, this is what I want. And it's starting to become very clear, yet there's a staying in awe of and rising above while staying grounded to step in the witness, right? A time that's requesting of us to stay really curious,
Mm-hmm.
grounded, like you said, is super, super key and hopeful, right? Kali Yuga, we talk about darkness, but it's so demonized. These cycles are a part of nature. It's like demonizing the night because we can't see. Well, when we can't see, any time we're tending to our light has that much more worth to it,
Mm.
right? And when we're in the light and we're working on light, it's like holding a candle up in the middle of the day. Sure, that's a light that touches many, yet there's an even greater responsibility to beckon Satyuga, or the light within that darkness container,
Mm.
because that light shines even brighter. And as we know, like any bright light, right? I can't help but, and talk about the new moon, because it's very relevant to that leaning into
Mm.
Pisces. Jupiter and Pisces, the new moon writes that story in a sense for the month to come, that flavor and element. And this coming weekend, I believe it's Sunday, we have Rohini, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Amavasya in Rohini. And so talking about light, I just can't help but to notice Aldebaran. Aldebaran, I believe, is the 14th brightest star in the sky. And what is that red giant but that bright shining star that can invoke so much, that invoke for more in the relative, that material
Yeah.
reaching for the shiny objects in the darkness, right? That analogy of the snake and the string, right? At night, the snake might, look very daunting, and when the light comes, it was just a string, right? So it's
Yeah.
that awakening the mind to, yes, we're here to enjoy the relative. What is Taurus, where Rohini sits? All of that material senses. And so we're at the tail end of being in awe, right? I think go time, in a sense, is coming soon.
Mm.
I might sound like a broken record, but the moment we get relieved of all of this curiosity and practicing a patience, and the doors open, we feel like rushing. And so when we feel like rushing, it's so important to have that grace and wisdom to rush like a royal elephant, because
Mm.
the new moon in Rohini is going to say, okay, let's get our hands in, let's feed the senses. And
Mm.
then next Friday, or the following Friday, the third, Mercury, also in Taurus, moves direct. Communication, expansion, clarity of path, right? The tangible things that we see and feel now are starting to open.
Mm.
And so the leaning into expansion, leaning into our practices, leaning into that higher mind. Yes, we're here to work with purpose, right?
Mm.
Dharma is not yourself in being and stay there, right? It's establish yourself in being, yogastha karmani, establish your being and then perform action, right? And
Right.
so, and yet we can get so lost in the action, especially we've been so in the ethereal witnessing that which is becoming. And
Mm.
so to step into action, yet as Lord Krishna said to Arjuna, be without the three gunas, or be without the clinging to the fruit of your action. And so that's that Jupiter and Pisces, that hope, that knowingness, that wisdom that says, yes, there's structure. If you want to get from A to B, one foot in front of the other will take you there, yet not being so attached to what it looks like, right? Not so attached to that story.
Mm.
And then the next day, it's like, it keeps coming, and that's the beauty of it. Everyone says, when's there a break? It's like, well, you've come to the Leela. There's no
Mm.
break with the Leela. That's the joy of it. It's the practice of slowly becoming the witness to the dance, the eternal dance, and being in awe of that. Yet
Mm.
so caught in the tumbling of the waves, and so in the celebrating of the victory of riding one for even just a fraction of a second.
Mm.
And so that Jupiter retrograde, which is perhaps part of that story we're talking about, right? That's what's so beautiful about your and I's conversation. It's like, it's not, this is what's going to happen, this is what you're going to feel. It's that, let's keep a conversation going, because we're just walking each other home.
Mm.
So June 4th, June 5th, Saturn goes retrograde, which says keep going and bring your user manual along with you. That's why Jyotish is so beautiful. There's a roadmap. I'm one of those, I was one of those kids that's like, let's go on an adventure, and so I'd be like, forget the path, and thankfully I had a vision of remembering. And so if it got dark and I was off trailing, I could guide back, maybe, a couple wrong turns. Yet that's the awareness of Jyoti, of Jyotish, is
Right.
saying, here's some potentials, here's some questions to help you navigate this trajectory.
Absolutely. That actually reminds me of this conversation around Jupiter, but also the deeper purpose of Jyotish, which I've been contemplating over the last many weeks. In my Dharma mentorship group, we're in module 3, which has to do with the solar plexus. This is when we focus on our power center. And of course, the stomach or the gut intelligence is the brain of the body. And fifth house, that intellect that resides within is found within our gut and our gut intelligence. I digress. My point being that we should never fall into this crutch of running our whole lives from Jyotish, because ultimately the wisdom of Jyotish is that Jyoti, that light you were referring to, that it is designed and has been designed to increase, awaken, strengthen the light of our own soul so that we can use our inner compass to make choices, decisions, to create a life that is in alignment with our deepest nourishment. This isn't about, and I see this happen a lot, where people are so fixated on the chart and the transits that they make every decision based on what the chart says or the transits are doing. And ultimately, the purpose here is that we strengthen our own inner trust, that we can feel the moon shifting into a new constellation and feel what a decision or a right action might be for our individual being. And so ultimately, and this is the way I teach, and what I hope my clients will aspire to, is that that trust within strengthens to the point of the chart almost becomes irrelevant. And it's not that we don't track and get curious, and I think of it more of as a reference point in many ways. Like here we are having these felt experiences. Okay, let's use the transits to reference what the inner is already experiencing, but not the other way around. And I'm really passionate about that because I think that we can use this tool, pragya prad, mistake of the intellect. These are ancient, extremely powerful resources and tools, and yet they can be misused. And we must not forget that the purpose of this tool called Jyotish is actually, bless you, imagine the ancestors are agreeing here, that this is a tool to strengthen our own light and our own self-trust, not disconnect us from that own inner knowing. And I think that that's something that Jupiter can support us with. I mean, ultimately, Jupiter is the guru, and certainly rules over Dharma and supporting that intelligence of Dharma. We watch some people, they live an entire life completely unaware, disconnected. Dharma's not even on their radar. And then others, it's this, I this is the thirst. This is the driving desire in life. And that's the nature of one's individual Jupiter or a relationship to Jupiter. So in any case, this intelligence and not losing sight of the true goal, which is a strengthening of the inner intelligence, not being dictated by the transits and this nakshatra, that nakshatra, but can you trust your own inner knowing? Yeah.
Oh, that's such a beautiful way to convey this story, which is so in tune with Jupiter and Pisces, right? Because if we start to identify as the body inevitably begins to break down, just as the chart inevitably evolves and becomes activated by transits. And so the inner listening, what is the inner listening but a kosh or space, right? That inner compass that you're speaking of. We so often want information, practicality, and guys, anyone listening, if we can, instead of looking for facts, because a fact is never going to be true for all time, right? Something that is true for all time in the Vedas is true from 6 different perspectives in the Vedantic way of looking at things, or which could also be called consilience. I know Terence McKenna talks about this, which is one step beyond proof in science. It's that perspective from all angles. And if we're looking to the relative, if we're looking into that which doesn't change, right? The mind, which is so impressionable, is also riding those waves. We have a loss. We feel that sadness. We have a win and we celebrate it. And if we get caught in that cycle, that's just leading to another birth. And the next birth can be in this moment. We always think about, oh, I don't want to take another birth in this reality. Yet, if we could consider each desire and each action is feeding the senses and maintaining a birth cycle. Right? Talk about our last new moon, right? The last new moon was in Bharani. And I was even amazed. I posted a picture of a womb the day before everyone started talking about the womb and ovaries, right? And I don't stay in touch with information. I was like the last one to the boat, yet the day before I posted this story of the womb. And so peeling the layers back, right? If this all comes from consciousness, akasha, Akasha stirs at the desire to experience itself, which brings out Vayu, which is the wind, right? The wind turns into the next element and so on, which creates this world. So what is Jupiter in Pisces? What is moving to our inner compass, but peeling away to the listening? Oh my goodness. It takes work to stay in the witness without trying to look for the answers. That's very Western of our mind to say, what's happening? When am I going to get this? What is it going to look like? Yet, the purpose of Jyotish is to exercise our free will. What do you want it to look like?
Can you say that again? I feel like we really need to get
okay. Yeah. Okay. So maybe I'll take even 2 steps back. What are we working with this chart, this Jyotish chart that we're here to transcend? So our Jyotish chart, which is so beautiful, it's so intimate, and it's feeding the small ego, right? I'm a Gemini rising, you're a Scorpio rising. It's like I can dance in that story for the rest of time. It's so fun. It's so personal. It's so precise, right? It's a beautiful story. It's like the embodiment of God within all of us that I just want to bow to. Yet, Jupiter in Pisces says, let's take a bigger step back or within. And so Jyotish, we could say that blueprint, that celestial architecture, is the sum total of that karmic blueprint that has become ripe for us to experience in this lifetime. And talk about pragya parat, that mistake of the intellect. We think, oh, this is my story, it's written. We're bound by that 80%. Even when we believe that that's our story, we still could say that we have 20% free will. Well, the more we attune with our own divinity, the more we pull back from these senses, right? We can break it all down to decrease and increase through the senses that is played out by the planets seizing us and gripping us and saying, more, I want to taste that. Or no, thank you, not right now. I'm complete, I'm content, I've had enough. And so the more we peel back to rest in being, right? Even then we want to master that. Can I master my inner compass? Well, that inner compass is that listening and resting. It's not about Shakti anymore. It's about Purusha. And what is Pisces? What is Jupiter? Yet Pisces we identify with as water. But Pisces and Jupiter are Akash. It's beyond all this, right? It's that final journey into stillness, into that which we can't really grasp because it's not made to be grasped. And so the more we align with that which is not made to be grasped, we awaken, like you said, that creative intelligence. And then we can exercise our free will. And the whole purpose is, yes, this is a framework, our Jyotish chart, like our physical body. And if I have an injury and I start to identify with an injury or an illness, then that becomes my story. So just like transcending the body, that I am not this body. It's like a jacket I've put on for some time, that when this journey is complete, I will take that jacket off. It doesn't have to be sad. It's another birth, right? Yeah. One thing needs to be complete for the next to evolve. We cry when windows are closed and celebrate when doors are open, and windows are shutting and doors are opening. So let's walk through those doors with that awareness of, what do I really want? How am I going to create that? Yes, we are limited to what we have in this moment, yet instead of saying, I need this to get there, what happens if you just have that trust into whatever you need to get there is going to come from wherever it is now?
Absolutely. That is actually the very conversation I was having with my mentorship clients yesterday. This deepening trust what would that feel like to deepen the trust, not in a bypassy way, not in a I completely surrender, Jesus take the wheel kind of bypass, but
Amen.
in in a deep surrender and trust in the knowing that we are taken care of, that there is an acceptance on this path of Dharma, that all is unfolding in a way that supports our awakening if we show up in that intention. And I think that the knowledge and the wisdom and the learning, and this is not book learning, this is deep inner knowing learning, that resonance of truth is emerging in a different way in our intellect, in our inner knowing, through this Jupiter transit. And that's what brings me hope, is that felt sense knowing is a completely different level of awareness than the cerebral. This embodied truth and knowing that I think is really strengthening right now for so many. Truth alone triumphs. Satyameva Jayate. If it's truth on one level, it's truth on all levels. And we see that expressed through nature. I always look to nature for the ultimate supreme truth, because if she is expressing it, then it must be true. That is one tangible I can rest in this uncertain existence, nature. And I think our own nature and our relationship with nature and her intelligence is strengthening for many of us right now. And that's one of the gifts of this transit. But that trust piece, I want to encourage others to deepen that sense of trust and knowing that all is unfolding in a way that is in alignment with truth, ultimately. But knowledge, wisdom, Dharma, that which is the supreme truth. I feel strongly that that is what we are awakening to on the planet right now. That, in fact, what many of us came here to experience is actually happening. I honestly didn't think that I would experience this in my lifetime. I had already kind of let go of that anything would ever change, or in my lifetime I would experience any sort of global shift. But I'm starting to feel more hopeful about that. And I think one of the things that's really been shifting, and as I have conversations with people, this relationship with fear is what is really changing right now. So many of us are having this deepening trust as a result of releasing and letting go of our relationship with fear. That I'll say personally, for me, my relationship with fear is dramatically shifting. And it's part of the surrender, the acceptance, the trust, that when the body is not gripping and contracted with fear, layer after layer of fear, and I keep finding new layers, and I can let that one go too. Don't have to hold on to it. And I was talking to a friend yesterday, and 5 years ago we would have had this conversation, and we would have added the but in there. I can let this go, but and that's changing now. It's I really can let it go. And the body is responding differently. And I'm not saying there's no fear. There, in a human body, you'll will probably always experience fear to some degree, but for me, there's a felt sense around the fear shifting, the relationship with fear shifting. And perhaps that's something about this Saturn retrograde that I'm curious about, because, you know, retrograde cycles are fascinating to me. And I don't know, do you have retrograde planets in your chart, Tulsi?
I don't.
I don't either. So
I was
I don't
contemplating that
ever,
this morning. That's funny.
I, I don't know how it feels until it's happening,
Yeah.
and then I can experience it. It's different for those who, have this birth experience with a retrograde. But what I find fascinating about retrograde planets is we get to do it over, right? And so Saturn's going to be going back into Capricorn. We've already done it. It was pretty challenging, actually. Like, for Saturn in his own sign, for me anyway, because of how that works in my chart, it was actually a very challenging 2.5 years. And then throwing in a debilitated Jupiter, it wasn't great. It wasn't, a lot of good things happened in a material sense, but also a lot of challenges, dharmically speaking. So what I'm interested to experience is this planet of grief, structure, time, re-entering this realm that we've already danced with, and how it's going to feel different because we've already done a lot of the cleanup, but we're going to be touching some of that grief again that we've already moved and worked with. And what I like to remember is that these retrograde cycles, it's like anything that still remains that needs to be digested or really reevaluated, there it is again. And we're doing that with Mercury right now. And usually retrograde Mercury doesn't impact me. I don't really have issues with Mercury in that way. But boy, this time it's really bringing up a lot for me, which I find fascinating. So I'm just curious about the Saturn retrograde. What are your thoughts on this return? And of course, at some point this year, we'll be doing a Jupiter return.
Mm-hmm.
So right now it's more of the Saturn. And that's a good 6 months
Yeah,
of this return.
through October.
Yeah, October.
Yeah, October 20th, I believe it goes direct. So I have been on just, I want to just echo the same page, that so much curiosity,
Yeah.
so much into that listening and container. I just can't help but reiterating quickly that doing the work lightly. I have been noticing that resistance to fear softening and just standing there. It's like being approached by a lion, and instead of being in fear, being in reverence. And reverence means I personally have been inviting myself to actually feel and listen. And what is Jyotish? It's that which is passed down. It's light, and light isn't written, it's conveyed, right? It's through Shravana, right? It's through that listening. And so I've been giving myself the space to say, oh, there's that coming up. And instead of bypassing it, it's like bringing it in for tea with that reverence, that I bow to you, and I think this Saturn going in retrograde, starting in Aquarius, I think July 12th, it goes back into Capricorn, still in Dhanishta star. It's that relationship with doing. right? Capricorn says, okay, we've done a whole lot. We've been measuring success by our productivity, right? But it is about finding that one action by doing which all else happens. So I think that rhythm star, right? That wealthy star is valuing our energy and our time in a different way. That slowing
Oh,
down
yes.
to what dance steps really are in tune with this song that has now shifted. It's so familiar. It's like a song we've heard 100 times. It's been playing out the last 2.5 years. Yet this time it's from a different perspective. We said, I think, or I said in our last talk about a paradigm shift. I kept saying after this eclipse period, let it have its way with you because you won't recognize yourself. Well, I'm not recognizing myself, and I'm not even trying to until after Mercury goes direct. I'm not even going to try to locate who I am because it's like allow nature to work on me, right? And also that slowing down. And so Saturn's going to go really, really slow. So there's going to be a shift in our relationship with doing and where we can anchor into that's going to be different than what you talked about, the Jupiter in Ucha, right? The or Nietzsche, sorry, the debilitated Jupiter, right, is Jupiter in Pisces. So what can we do about it? It's actually pulling the arrow back. It's doing the work, right? The least amount of effort kind of work, but leaning into getting that guidance that we need that is very much personal, that inner guidance that's breaking the boundaries of the concrete intellect and staying in that curiosity, staying in that positive element that Jupiter is about unconditional love. Jupiter doesn't bring conditions, especially in Pisces, right? It's not with conditions, right? It's not considering what do I get in return. And so acting from that place of giving, that place of giving what you have to give and filling up the container while you're doing that.
Yeah.
And in the letting go, right? Yes, the secret to receiving is yes, you have to ask. Sometimes we're afraid to even ask, but leaving it at the asking, the internal asking. So much of it is the asking, and even more so is the letting go.
Yeah, and another word for this letting go is that the trust that this my arrow back, it's going to hit the mark. And if not, I'll try again. But I trust this process of releasing the arrow. That this is the way. There is no way. I'm thinking of this quote from one of the horse trainers I really admire, Mark Rashid, and I have it on a sticky note. It's been on a sticky note for over a year. Turn fear into curiosity. Turn fear into curiosity. And of course, a lot of the metaphors in horse work are so relevant for every other area of life. So this turning fear into curiosity, and as you were reminding us to ask the internal question, stay with the question, hold the question, and really be in honor of the unknown, but then the trust that this is going to find its way, its natural way to either an answer or a conclusion or but I'm also, and maybe this is the Jupiter in my fifth house right now, but just this surrender that the way is the way, or ultimately I'm very fond of the middle way and walking a path that is more about tonicity, the showing up, the actioning, but at the same time, that deep surrender and trust that um, all is the path. So the middle way. And that's actually, the article that I wrote about Saturn in Aquarius. That's how I titled it, because I do believe that this is the opportunity for us right now to find a more integrated middle path rather than these extremes, which we've been
Mhm.
working for the last, 18 months with Rahu and Ketu exalted. There was a lot of extremism that
Mhm.
emerged in that cycle. And now we have the ability to move forward in a very different way, a more intelligent, embodied way that is grounded in this end rather than right, wrong,
Yeah.
good, bad.
Mm.
So we should probably have another conversation in another month or so and see where we are at that point. Is there anything you want to add here, Tulsi, before we close? Anything Jupiter or otherwise that feels important to name before we close?
Mm. I think just the last, just to kind of echo what you said, right? Turning fear into curiosity, and that Rahu and Ketu access of self, and the other is that fine tuning of balance and being kind to yourself, as in the finding the middle way. It usually involves this dance of too much, not enough. And that Saturn retrograde, it's going to say, here, let's constrict slightly, so the swinging is perhaps not as dramatic, right?
Mm,
So being kind to yourself, staying curious, being in the trust.
mm,
And
yeah.
I would absolutely love another chat. I just adore our time together.
I know. And I'm proud of myself because it's really hard to talk right now. But we did it. It happened. It worked. I hope it made sense. And I'll look forward to our next conversation. We'll check in. We'll see. Maybe next time is a Saturn conversation. We can go
Ooh,
more into Saturn and what he's doing. And I like that we were able to touch in on a lot of different qualities that are emerging right now. Jupiter, of course, being a major player in what we're so many of us are experiencing right now. And I would encourage everyone to just keep deepening that listening skill, that quality of listening within, and the intelligence that is possible at this time. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend sharing your knowledge and wisdom, Tulsi. Of course,
thank
people
you.
can find you from your Instagram profile. They can book in for a session with you and schedule that directly from there, I believe. Is there anything else you want to add before we close?
Mm.
People can find you and book in on the website, right?
Absolutely. And there was one more thing I was trying to reach into my brain for while I was talking before. So yes, my booking link actually is connected to my Instagram. The very bottom, link is my link tree. And
Mm,
the last little action point, because I think there's always two things: what's happening internally and what's happening externally. And as that fear drops away, sometimes we can fall back into old patterns of putting our attention on partner, home, creativity. And I think right now, if we focus on purpose, if we focus on
mm,
serving, then the
always.
other things will be taken care of.
100%. Ugh, always come back to Dharma. There is no other way. And there was a beautiful reminder from my assistant, my co-coach today. She's in um, a decolonizing program, and strengthening the indigenous wisdom of the Veda and the roots of Veda. And I was listening to um, her um, her speech today, and she was reminding this beautiful reminder from the indigenous perspective of Dharma, which is that all is Dharma. And there is no separation from this purpose, this deep soul purpose of life. We can't be separated from this. It is a mistake of the intellect, pragya prad, to even think that we could be separate or disconnected from the purpose, which is the whole reason for being alive in this body and on this planet. And of course, it's nature who mirrors that divine knowing and intelligence to us. So I love this reminder that stay connected to this divine purpose within. Of course, Jyotish can support that understanding and that intelligence, but that is the way. That is the only way. And we must not forget that all is taken care of when we are in right relationship with the purpose. And I mean that not in like a forced way, but that there is no other way. So I could go on and on about that, but obviously that's my passion, and that's why I'm here, and to inspire others in that way. And I'm truly grateful for our conversations, Tulsi. I've realized that through our connection, I feel a little less alone, knowing that there's another Jyotishi out there who has a very similar awareness and understanding of the cosmos, the embodied cosmos. And I so appreciate your ways and your wisdom and coming here and having these conversations with me. And we'll just keep it going.
So appreciate you, Sarah. Really looking forward to next time.
Thank you, Tulsi. And we'll figure out when that will be. And for those who are interested in my Jupiter horoscopes, I believe there's a link in my profile and you can check it out there and get access to those. All right, Tulsi, until next time, take good care. I'll look forward to catching up outside of Instagram, and stay in the body. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Thank you for being here.